Thank you, Sarah. Woo! 2 years, crazy. I'm so glad to have you all back here. This is just amazing. So thank you all for joining us. And it's my pleasure to make introductions to our next speaker, our morning keynote for Thursday. Charlie is an incredible person that you're going to get to know more about as he comes up here and shares his story and talks about what's happening at the federal level. Charlie Wooley is also a distinguished alumni of UW-Stevens Point. And I want to just take a moment. How many pointers do we have in the audience? Please raise your hand if you're a graduate of UW-Stevens Point. All right, love it. Charlie is a distinguished graduate of our program. And instead of giving a big introduction about like sort of his professional background, I just want to mention that you can go online and search his name and search UW-Stevens Point. And you'll find, I'm sure, some of the things I just mentioned, that he's an award winner, but you'll also find this amazing story that was printed in the Pointer newspaper. Our students on campus have been producing a newspaper for decades. It's part of our communications program, and it's part of how everything we do on campus tries to give students a practical experience and something that they're studying. And Charlie's story is just amazing. His story is about a season that he spent on a Russian trawler. What year was it? 1975 on a Russian trawler. Some of you in the room maybe are old enough to remember what things were like between the United States and Russia in 1975. Things were kind of intense back then, just as they might be kind of intense right now. But his work out there was to basically help ensure that international treaties around fisheries management were still being adhered to. And there was just a cultural exchange and just an understanding that regardless of what's happening in terms of international diplomacy, natural resources have to be stewarded and cared for. And it's just amazing that as a young person, he had that opportunity to go out and be an ambassador for this country and an ambassador for natural resources. Please join me in giving a warm Wisconsin welcome to Charlie Wooley.
Well, thank you, Eric. That was just, that was a great memory going back to my days here at Stevens Point as a student during the summer, and just a wonderful experience. Great way to learn how to work with others, how to also be an ambassador for the United States and what we find is so important. And at that time it was freedom, and it still is today. And I had an opportunity to educate a number of Russians, Ukrainians, Lithuanians that I worked with at that point in time on the value of freedom. And hopefully, maybe there's one or two of them over there that will recall that, be able to do something about it under the circumstances that the Russians are facing today. Okay, well, I am just, I'm honored to be here, and Amy and Eric, Sarah and Mike, thank you for welcoming me here today. I also want to just recognize that I'm going to be talking a lot of stories, examples of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service working so well here in the state of Wisconsin. But almost each story has a link back to the Wisconsin DNR, one way or another. And I'm just so proud of the working relationship that our biologists have here in Wisconsin with the Wisconsin DNR. Preston Cole is a colleague of mine. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Preston, having seen him in difficult situations on a number of occasions. The way he acts, the way he supports, the way he protects Wisconsin natural resources is incredible. Todd Ames, a good friend of mine, and you can't mention water in Wisconsin without thinking about Todd. I know Todd just retired in January, but whenever I'm talking or thinking about water in Wisconsin, I think of Todd Ames. So this is a picture of a cisco, and a very important species of fish that we work with here in Wisconsin. I'll have a little bit more about that here in just a second. But I really love the theme that is part of the conference here, protecting what we love for the future. And I'll have to admit, I have some skin in the game, as they say, and I'm saying protecting what we love for the future, but more importantly, I'm saying I'm protecting what I love for the future. what my family loves for the future here in Wisconsin. I have 2 daughters. They've learned to fish, even though I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I live in Minneapolis now. My wife is from Sheboygan. I went to school here at Stevens Point. I have so many connections here in Wisconsin. My 2 daughters on the left, when they were young, spent a lot of time with me fishing here in Wisconsin. I've had an opportunity to fish in Green Bay, which I love, for muskies, bottom left-hand picture, Door County for walleyes, top right-hand corner, Rush Lake, waterfowl hunting. So I've got skin in the game here when it comes to water resources in Wisconsin. I've also had a chance to introduce my brother, who lives on the East Coast, to the wonders of Wisconsin and his family, top left-hand picture. Again, my 2 daughters who have learned the value of the natural resources, both being in Minnesota and over here when we visit in Wisconsin. My son-in-law's father, bottom left-hand corner, I took him fishing over in Green Bay. Got lucky, we had a wonderful day. Bottom right-hand corner, the Chippewa flowage. Again, you can see I love Wisconsin, and I love Wisconsin waters and Wisconsin issues, as does my family. So I also learned and developed a conservation ethic here at Stevens Point. It wasn't just about love of being outside, love of being able to fish and hunt, but there was a conservation ethic that was instilled in us when we were going to school here at Stevens Point. And yesterday, as I drove in from Minneapolis, I had an opportunity to stop at the Schmeekley Reserve, walk into the visitor center there by design, because I wanted to walk through the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. And of course, Wisconsin is known for Adol Leopold, Muir, all sorts of great conservationists that came from Wisconsin early in the last century. Rightfully so, very respectful, very proud of the heritage of Wisconsin in their writings and their teachings. But there is one person there that is in the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame that had a direct impact on me, and that's Dr. George Becker, who's from Milwaukee, but taught here at Stevens Point for years, famous for the author of the Fishes of Wisconsin book, which I actually have 2 at home, and just a wonderful person that instilled this conservation ethic in all the students that went through his class. And what that ethic was to take care of the water. As a fishery biologist and aquatic biologist, he stressed taking care of the water in any way, shape, or form that you can. And also, and I know, and I still remember this to this day, being respectful of living things. Being respectful of a fish, even though it might be in a jar of formaldehyde that you're studying, trying to identify. Dr. Becker instilled in all of us going through those classes, this is a creation that the Lord made. Even though it might be in formaldehyde, it deserves respect. And I've always remembered that, and I've always tried in my involvement in activities with the Fish and Wildlife Service to instill that in others and to actually utilize that on a daily basis in my activities. So today, Eric has asked me to just talk a little bit about the Fish and Wildlife Service to all of you folks. Obviously, we're not the Department of Natural Resources, but we're their partner in protection of natural resources when appropriate and when asked by the DNRs. And he's also asked me not only to talk about what we're doing in Wisconsin right now and what we've done in the last couple of years, but also to transition into the future. What are some of the programs that are going to be coming along from the Biden administration that have the potential? And we will make sure that that potential is instilled and utilized here in Wisconsin to protect natural resources. So 2 sections here, what we've done in the past, what we're doing right now, then I'll transition into the future. So the Fish and Wildlife Service, we have about 20 offices here in Wisconsin. We have 12 national wildlife refuges, and we work with the Department of Natural Resources to manage fish and wildlife resources in the state. The Department of Natural Resources is the lead manager. It is a state responsibility to manage resources within the state. We assist and help when needed. We have certain authorities, particularly with threatened and endangered species, that we utilize in concert with the Department of Natural Resources. So we're a partner in a lot of natural resource issues with these 20 field offices, field-based activities here in Wisconsin. So we have national wildlife refuges, we have fishery offices, we have a couple fish hatcheries, and we also have a number of law enforcement officers who are primarily undercover law enforcement officers that work on anything from international wildlife trade. They could be in Kenya today working on an elephant case, or up in Door County helping the DNR on a waterfowl case, depending on what the need is. But again, we're really proud of the working relationship we have with these field offices with the Wisconsin DNR. Our crown jewel in the National Wildlife Refuge system is Horicon. And I think all of you are familiar with Horicon, central part of Wisconsin, one of the largest freshwater marshes in the United States. It certainly gets stressed with nutrients coming into it at times. We work very closely with the state wildlife management area associated right next to Horicon, but just a great area for people to recreate, for people to understand and learn about wildlife, to be able to fish and hunt and just enjoy nature. Necedah National Wildlife Refuge, another real gem. West Central Wisconsin, famous for the whooping cranes and the reintroduction through Operation Migration a number of years ago, utilizing ultralight airplanes. Also a tremendous restoration project over there for red-headed woodpeckers as we work to restore oak savannas and habitat work at Necedah. Our National Fisheries Center, Midwest Fisheries Center, is down in La Crosse. This is a cutting-edge facility that works on a whole host of issues, a biosecure lab, very state-of-the-art, and we've perfected the use of environmental DNA at this lab. Environmental DNA allows us to go out and get a water sample in a particular location, go through an analytical process and be able to see, gee, do we have invasive silver or bighead carp in that water sample? It's been a great tool for us. We're expanding the use of that tool into other ways, and our Midwest Fisheries Center in La Crosse is a great example of that. Genoa National Fish Hatchery is a hatchery located along the Mississippi River, southwest Wisconsin. Does a lot of work with Higgins eye pearly mussels and also with lake sturgeon. Very important as we restore lake sturgeon throughout the Midwest. They also provide 8 additional species for management needs here in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And they have a focus on really tough issues, learning how to culture mussels, which has been very, very important for us as we restore threatened and endangered mussels here in Wisconsin. We also have a hatchery far northwestern Wisconsin, Iron River, that focuses on lake trout restoration in Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. One of the big boosts of funding that we in the United States have seen for environmental conservation in the Midwest was from the Obama administration. A candidate, Obama, when he was running for president, stated that if he was elected, he would provide a significant amount of money for Great Lakes restoration. And when he was elected in 2010, he kept that campaign promise. And the next year we had $475 million that went to the United States Environmental Protection Agency in Chicago for Great Lakes restoration work. And it's really been wonderful to be able to utilize those dollars with our state partners, with NGOs, to start to restore the most precious freshwater source anywhere in the world, the Great Lakes. And we've received about $300 million ourselves to be involved in restoration work. And we had a lot of projects that we've conducted here in Wisconsin. I have a list of projects here that are like 20 pages long of projects that we and our state partners, NGO partners, have been able to produce to provide environmental benefits, to protect water, restore areas, restore wetlands here in Wisconsin through the GLRI, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And I'll talk about a couple here in just a second. We also are able to focus on environmental contaminants and cleaning up environmental contaminants, dealing with invasive species, particularly the invasive silver and bighead carp down in the Illinois waterway system, which is extremely important to Wisconsin, extremely important to the Great Lakes. because we do not want to see those invasive species get into southern Lake Michigan, potentially get into Wisconsin waters. So we have been able to utilize Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding to deal with those issues and with some others, sea lamprey being one, which I'll talk about in a second. Another project that I'm extremely proud of and has been a little off the main stage as it relates to restoration activities in Wisconsin has been the Fox River Green Bay Natural Resource Damage Assessment work. And natural resource damage assessments is a subset of the Superfund law, and it allows the Fish and Wildlife Service to go in and make a case that illegally released contaminants, in this case in Wisconsin's Green Bay, PCBs from paper mills, have impacted fish and wildlife and people. So it's not the cleanup side from Superfund, it's the environmental restoration side. And we've been able to use that authority working very, very closely with the Oneida tribes and with the Wisconsin DNR to go in and restore wetlands, fish populations in the Green Bay area, and then go up into the tributaries with the Menominee tribe and restore areas in the Menominee Nation through our natural resource damage assessment. So this work started by us developing with Wisconsin DNR a really good scientific case that release of PCBs through paper mills into the Wisconsin River were bioaccumulated up into fish. From fish, they went into eagles, they went into cormorants, and bioaccumulation of fish ultimately also ends up in people when people eat fish. Now, there are consumption advisories for a lot of these fish in the Fox River Green Bay, and we're able to utilize those consumption advisories, go back to the paper companies and say, look, you need to make amends to the citizens of Wisconsin for the impacts and the damages that you've occurred on your watch here in Green Bay. And working in close concert with the Wisconsin DNR, that's exactly what we've done. We're able to get $90 million. We're able to utilize those dollars and working with the two tribes, Oneidas and the Menominees and the Wisconsin DNR, develop fabulous restoration projects along Green Bay. And in a lot of cases, we're able to take that money and have somebody else, Ducks Unlimited or another conservation group, come in and match it. So we're able to take it, and in most cases, double it. And we've been able to do some really fabulous environmental restoration in the Green Bay area that I'm super proud of. And I'm, again, really, really proud of the working relationship we have with the two tribes, the two tribal chairs, and the Wisconsin DNR in this part of Wisconsin. Sheboygan, near and dear to my heart because that's where my wife is from. We've been able to utilize some of the same authorities, again, working with Wisconsin DNR and EPA to go in and help clean up, particularly the last 14 miles of the Sheboygan River as it enters into Lake Michigan. We have some fish habitat restoration projects that we've been able to fund. We've been able to help reduce some of the sediment. I really have to tip my hat to EPA, the state of Wisconsin, for the work that they've done to help restore the Sheboygan River. I know from conversations with folks in Sheboygan that because of this work, cleaning up the lower 14 miles of the Sheboygan River, cleaning up the harbor, they no longer have a stigma of a river that has contaminants in it. Those contaminants are gone. They've been able to reconnect to the river, to the harbor. It has turned the fortunes in Sheboygan around because of the ability to go in, identify a problem, utilize authorities, work as a team, get those contaminants out, and turn the tide in how Sheboygan is viewed. Property values have come up tremendously. There are a number of studies that have proven that. My brother-in-law owns a coffee shop in Sheboygan. His business has increased because there's more tourism. There are more people coming to enjoy the river, the harbor, Lake Michigan because of the cleanup. So there is a great economic link to a lot of this work here too, as well as obviously taking care of water, fish, mussels, et cetera, that is also very important. Milwaukee River cleanup. You know, we've had a small role here, again, tap and tip my hat to Wisconsin DNR and EPA. Milwaukee area was identified as an area of concern, and it was focal point for a lot of partners going in to help restore. Again, remove contaminants out of the river, which is extremely important. And I'm really proud of a couple of projects that we, through our fishery office, have been involved in the Milwaukee River. I also want to just point out that one of our external affairs specialists, Hannah Bergman, who helped put this presentation together, Hannah lives just almost in the shadow of the Estabrook Dam, where we, utilizing some authorities and money that we have, we're able to go in and help remove that dam and help start to restore a free-flowing Milwaukee River. So it's unique and very interesting that Hannah, who's helped with this presentation, knew all about Estabrook Dam from growing up just in basically in the shadows of that dam as a child. This work has also opened up a whole new section of the Milwaukee River for lake sturgeon habitat. And this is fabulous because lake sturgeon can go in, utilize a cleaned up river, start to reproduce, provide tremendous benefits to people in Wisconsin. Another area is in the Milwaukee River is the Mequon-Thiensville Dam Fishway enhancements. Again, a powerful partnership that has been developed here. And we have a fishery office in Green Bay that has helped design some of the fish passage work and the enhancements. They've taken experience that they've had in other parts of the state and utilized it there. And it's a great example of the conference theme of protection, of restoring, of helping. And we're very, very proud of that work. Also want to have a shout out here to the grassroots support that allows this work to happen. These are local partnerships that come to us, come to the Department of Natural Resources and say, in some cases, help. We have the opportunity to come in and enhance a fishway, to get more fish up this river system. And we pay attention when partners come to us. We pay attention when local grassroots organizations raise their hand and say they need help. And I really want to have a shout out here to Pat Gerber from River Edge Nature Center that I think is here today. Nature Center has been a great partner in this Milwaukee River cleanup fish passage work. Rebecca Fedak, Lake Michigan Basin Supervisor for the Wisconsin DNR. Rebecca has been very engaged and helpful and has provided tremendous leadership here. And we're just proud of the small part that the Fish and Wildlife Service has had. Okay, I'm going to shift a little bit now and we're going to go over to the Mississippi River. And we're involved, there's a theme here you can see, big lakes, Great Lakes, big rivers, Mississippi River. We call these interjurisdictional waters, where there are numerous states that are helping manage these. And over on the Mississippi, we have almost 300 miles of the Upper Mississippi River National Fish and Wildlife Refuge. And we really focus on restoring, reclaiming, protecting, providing recreational opportunities in the Upper Mississippi River. We work very closely, again, with a number of DNRs at Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa to help restore and improve the health of the Mississippi, particularly the Upper Myth. We have a project called the Pool 8 Islands Project, which is just south of La Crosse, that provides fabulous overwintering habitat for fish, great opportunities for wildlife, for viewing. We utilize dredge materials coming out of the river, utilizing really good engineering expertise that the Army Corps of Engineers has, and go in and build and restore habitat there. Again, a wonderful partnership with Wisconsin DNR and others. We have a project called the Reno Bottoms Habitat Rehabilitation Enhancement Project, which is in Pool 9. And this is just north of Prairie du Chien. It's a floodplain forest that we're helping restore, again, with the Army Corps of Engineers, and just a great example of restoration. We also are involved in what are known as drawdowns. And in the Mississippi River, you have these series of locks and dams. And those locks and dams went in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. And they changed a free-flowing Mississippi River into a big series of pools, navigation pools, a navigation channel, et cetera. Well, we've worked very closely with Wisconsin DNR and with the Army Corps of Engineers in a couple of cases to go in and do drawdowns, which means during the summer, lower flows, we actually release water, a tremendous amount of water, to draw those pools, those reservoirs down, so that we can get habitat protected and we can get new growth of all sorts of plants in those backwaters as the water is drawn down to help migrating waterfowl in the fall and also to help fish. Well, lo and behold, we went in a couple of years ago and did one of these drawdown projects. And the sediments in this particular pool, Pool 9, had not seen any sunlight for more than 100 years since those dams went in. Within a month, we started seeing wild potato forming. We saw wild celery popping up through the mud. We saw plant seeds that had been dormant and in the mud of the Mississippi River for 100 years coming back to life in these drawdowns, in these areas that have been dewatered. Really remarkable work, and another great example of partnerships that benefits people and water quality, fish and wildlife in the end. I love our work with mussels, freshwater mussels. They're a real harbinger of the health of river systems. Unfortunately, we have a number that are threatened or endangered here in the Midwest, but we are doing everything we can to help restore them. We work with our Genoa fish hatchery with Minnesota, Wisconsin DNRs to do a restoration work. We focus on the Chippewa River. We focus on the Mississippi River, and it's helping turn the tide with mussels. And it's an important aspect of recovering an endangered species that we as human beings are responsible for, to getting it to a point where they are considered threatened or endangered, and in some cases, extremely rare. Mussels have this fabulous life cycle, and I'm just going to take a second to just share what I think is just a truly extraordinary way of how mussels have adapted and how mussels reproduce. So if you see in the bottom here, you see a picture of an adult mussel, and this is the wavy-rayed lamp mussel. And mussels, the names of mussels are just fabulous. I think my most interesting one is the heel splitter mussel, and I can just imagine how heel splitter was named. But the mussels have to have a fish species to complete their life cycle. And in this case, with the wavy-rayed lamp mussel, it's a smallmouth bass. And what happens is that the mussel is down in the mud, and it sets up little tentacles out of the mud. The smallmouth bass comes over, thinks it's a worm, a hellgrammite, goes in and grabs it to try to eat it. And that mussel puts out glaucidia, which are small baby mussels. And those glaucidia get caught in the smallmouth bass's gill rays. The bass goes, I thought I was getting a worm or a hellgrammite for food, and it gets a mouthful of these glaucidia, and some of those glaucidia stay in the gill rakers of that fish, develop utilizing the blood source of those gill rakers, and then drop off into the sediments or the bottom of a river, and survive, grow up to be adult mussels, and start the whole cycle over again. So just a fascinating way of conducting reproduction in a river system. If you ever get a chance to see any of these videos, it's just fascinating to see how something that's you think is so primitive, a mussel sitting in the bottom of a river, yet how sophisticated and smart it is to be able to carry on its life cycle. We have the same thing happening with winged maple leafs and channel catfish. The important issue here, though, is when you come in and build dams, and you have series of dams and river systems, those host species of fish a lot of times can't move back and forth because they're blocked by that dam. And then obviously, if there's a link back to a reproductive strategy in a mussel, and those fish can't move back and forth, and the mussel doesn't have a smallmouth or a catfish to be the host, it's a problem for the mussel. Brook trout restoration. We're going to move a little bit north now into Lake Superior. We have an office that works, again, this theme here of cooperation with Wisconsin DNR is found in Lake Superior Basin. We have spent a lot of time removing barriers in the basin. We have a lot of bank stabilization projects. We work with providing funding to a lot of NGOs there, tribes to protect and restore brook trout habitat. Very proud of the working relationship we have with the Red Cliff and the Bad River bands and some of the Lake Superior counties working on on brook trout restoration. The interesting thing here is that we've done a lot of really good restoration. Wisconsin DNR has managed regulations to a point where we have been able to avoid an Endangered Species Act listing of lake trout. 10 years ago, we had a petition in front of us to go in and list lake trout as either threatened or endangered in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, all within the Lake Superior Basin. Because of all this really good restoration work that had been underway and occurring, we were able to avoid that listing, and we're able to continue to develop really good programs that help restore brook trout. Lake trout restoration, a really, really interesting story. Again, all focused on partnerships. Lake trout were almost extinct by lethal attacks from sea lamprey in the 1930s and 1940s in Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. And by 1955, there were just a handful of lake trout left in Lake Michigan, almost extinct, all due to sea lamprey coming in and going in and causing a tremendous amount of mortality on lake trout. We've been able, and I'm going to talk about this just in a second here, to come in with a really good control program, but we've been able to turn the corner with lake trout restoration. It's a success story right now where we do not need Endangered Species Act listings as either threatened or endangered for that, because we've been able to control sea lamprey, which I'll talk about in just a second, and also go in and restore through stocking lake trout populations, particularly in Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. Lake sturgeon, what a fabulous and interesting fish, prehistoric. We have really done a nice job of, again, working with partnerships. And here is where a lot of lake associations, private citizens have helped protect and restore lake sturgeon in Wisconsin. We in the Fish and Wildlife Service focus primarily on the Great Lakes with lake sturgeon. Bad River in Wisconsin is a great example of work that we do with the tribes on Lake Superior, a lot of work in tributaries in Lake Michigan. But Wisconsin DNR has really done a good job of managing interior populations of lake sturgeon, particularly in the Lake Winnebago system. And I'll talk about that in just a second, why that's so important. Another project that we're proud of is the Menominee River Fish Passage Project, upper part of Green Bay. We've provided, working with, again, our state partners, in this case, because it's a river that divides Michigan and Wisconsin, Michigan DNR, Wisconsin DNR, and our hydropower company up there, a coalition of citizens who have formed the Michigan Hydro Relicensing Coalition, which have been very influential in our work there. And we received $3 million from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Fund to go in and build a fish passage facility at the lowermost dam. And this is a huge elevator system that moves 150 pound lake sturgeon from the lower Menominee because they're blocked by this dam, but they're attracted into this fish passage facility with this sophisticated state-of-the-art electric fish passage sorting system. They're able to get up above 2 dams, spawn successfully. Those young are tough enough to be able to go over or through the dams, get back down into the northern part of Green Bay and survive. And really a wonderful project based, again, on partnerships, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative money, and really good science to support the development of the elevator system, and a tremendous amount of support from locals in the Menominee area, both in Michigan and Wisconsin, to continue to prod us and make sure we do the right thing there. So I was talking about lake sturgeon earlier. Lake sturgeon are a species where we have a lot of important work that we've been doing in the upper Midwest. And in retrospect, I'm so thankful that we have been spending 10, 15, 20 years working on this species, because we have in front of us from one of the environmental groups a petition to have to list lake sturgeon as either threatened or endangered. So what we're able to do now is go through and do what we call a status assessment, look at the status of lake sturgeon in the upper Midwest. And because of a lot of the good work that we've done here in Wisconsin with a lot of help from the DNR, a lot of help from private citizens. We're able to, as we go through, do this species status assessment, say, wait a second, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there were some really low populations, but because of this restoration work, I think we're seeing lake sturgeon starting to turn the corner. And that's a really good thing for lake sturgeon and the health of these river systems that produce lake sturgeon, because attention is focused. You got lake sturgeon, you got to have good water quality, and that's what's happening in these areas. So again, sea lamprey. This is an invasive species where I'm really proud of what we call the binational work, the work the United States government and the Canadian government do together. Because as you know, we have 5 Great Lakes. Only one is completely in the boundaries of the United States, Lake Michigan. The other 4 we share with the United States waters, and we share it with Canada. And in the late 1880s, sea lamprey were able to get from the Atlantic Ocean through the state of New York when there were improvements done at the Welland Canal to allow more commerce in the Welland Canal. And this enabled sea lamprey to get around Niagara Falls and get into the lower Great Lakes. And by 1936, 1937, they were right in Lake Michigan. And as I mentioned, by the mid-1950s, we had almost completely lost lake trout in Lake Michigan due to sea lamprey. And this has been a really, really tough invasive species challenge, because we had to figure out how are we going to kill sea lamprey in these river systems where they go in, spawn, and the small lamprey stay in these river systems for a year. How are we going to be able to go in and treat these rivers, protecting the rivers, protecting the water, protecting the other fish, the mussels that are in these rivers? Well, we were able to utilize science, and we're able to utilize some really good thinking out of Fish and Wildlife Service Science Lab over along the Mississippi River in La Crosse to come up with a chemical that just kills sea lamprey. Remarkable development, particularly when it was identified and utilized starting way back in the 1970s. So with this chemical, we're able to go in and successfully treat these streams and have very little impact on mussels, other fish, water quality, people, et cetera. And it's a real example of good science utilized with the end result being protecting water, protecting resources in that water, but then eliminating or getting rid of the sea lamprey that are causing so much problem if they weren't controlled in the Great Lakes. We do a lot of control work in tributaries, Wisconsin tributaries into Lake Michigan. We do not have any projects identified this year for Lake Michigan. It's kind of an every other year episode. We do have some work though up in Lake Huron that we'll be doing this summer. So the other thing is, you can't rest on your accomplishments. Sea lamprey are out there. We're watching them, we're controlling them. We have to be vigilant. We don't know if there's going to be over time any kind of development of sea lamprey so that they can become conditioned to the control, the chemicals that we put in the streams to kill them. So we're monitoring that very, very closely as we speak. Invasive carp, a real threat to the Great Lakes, a real threat to interior Wisconsin rivers if they would get into southern Lake Michigan. We've been dealing with this issue now for 12 years, and we have a really good team that has been on this for 12 years. This is the only project I've ever been involved in where members of Congress have knocked down our doors saying, how can we help you, Fish and Wildlife Service, keep these fish out of the Great Lakes? The tremendous amount of support that we've received from members of Congress, both parties, has been phenomenal. We have the money that we need to do this. We're working very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers to keep them south of what is known as the Army Corps of Engineers electrical barrier in the Chicago area waterway system, which could potentially be a pathway into southern Lake Michigan. So a really tough issue, but one where we have the resources, thanks to members of Congress from both sides. We use science, we use partnerships, we use technology to keep these fish at bay, and we're moving them back from any potential way of getting into southern Lake Michigan. This is a 12-year battle that we've been fighting, and we've got more to go, but I know we're going to be able to win it. Okay, so this is where Eric has asked me to start to transition into the future, and I'm very confident that the future is going to be extremely bright for us here in the Upper Midwest, particularly here in Wisconsin, with a number of projects that are coming online from the Biden administration. We have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that is providing us, the Fish and Wildlife Service, almost $100 million over the next 5 years to do and continue environmental restoration work here in the Midwest. Obviously, some of that will be coming to Wisconsin. We look at this as a once-in-a-generational opportunity to continue to build on the great partnerships that we have. This money is going to be able to help us address drought. In some cases, wildfires, not as big of an issue here in the Midwest as we see out west, but still, we have areas where we do have some wildfire concerns here, certainly flooding, and still some legacy pollution, like I mentioned, the Milwaukee River, Sheboygan, Green Bay. There still are some areas, particularly in the interjurisdictional areas, Great Lakes, where we have some authority that we need to clean up, that we need to turn into success stories like I mentioned about Sheboygan. So we will be receiving some of this funding soon. We'll start to engage with our state partners on how to spend it wisely. Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is also getting more money. We will have a gradual uptick from about $400 million a year to about $500 million each year. We've already started that this fiscal year, FY22. That's going to, again, continue to provide us a source of funding for us and our partners, NGO partners, to do good work in the Great Lakes. And GLRI, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, funding has been really utilized very well by a lot of smaller communities who've worked with us and have worked with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to get smaller projects funded. They may be small in our minds, but to those groups, they're extremely important. They're very big. And it's a great way for us to not only look at some of these big projects, big issues, but also be respectful to local communities and their needs. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is going to allow us to continue to do that. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is providing an additional $1 billion to the Great Lakes also. So we have the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that I've been talking about. Now we have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that's also coming on board, provide an additional $1 billion for the Great Lakes. I've never used the word billions before as I've talked about funding for our kind of work. You know, we've been just so lucky to get the millions and so appreciative of getting that kind of funding. When we start talking about billions, it's almost mind-boggling. But we still have a tremendous amount of opportunity to clean up areas of concern in the Great Lakes where we can't go and say a paper company is responsible for those PCBs. Let's get the paper company to clean up. We have legacy pollution, legacy contaminants that are out there that we can't source back to a company. So we need to go in and do what I consider one of the most important things for people and wildlife in these areas where you have contamination in the sediments. You have to go in and do what we call break the pathway. You've got to remove those sediments out of the bottom of harbors so that they don't bioaccumulate up into fish and then from fish into eagles, other fish-eating birds, and more importantly, people. And the bipartisan infrastructure money is going to be utilized to go into some of these areas and do exactly that. Break that pathway. Get rid of those contaminants. Get rid of those poisons that are still in some of our harbors in Lake Superior and along Lake Michigan. And that, over time, will remove fish consumption advisories, which means fish are safe for everybody to eat. That's our goal. So we have we have an opportunity again with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that we're going to run with. We're going to take advantage of it. We're going to do it properly. We also have the Great America's Outdoors Act, which is coming online. And this is going to provide us funding to not only build new visitor centers, interpretive centers, like the one we have over in Southwest Wisconsin, just over near, just south of La Crosse. It's going to allow us to come in and build these new facilities, repair the ones that we have. Horicon, Necedah will get additional dollars to help maintain the visitor centers, provide more recreational opportunities for people. And it's also providing $900 million a year to what is known as the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And this is extremely important because the Land and Water Conservation Fund allows local communities to go in and purchase land for parks, for the state to come in and purchase land for wildlife management areas, et cetera. So the Land and Water Conservation Fund supports high quality recreation opportunities for the American public to utilize lands. And the beauty of this is that it comes from taxes raised from offshore oil and gas development. So even though there's offshore oil and gas development on federal lands, there is, and obviously, you know, people benefit from that. There's a tax, and that tax goes back into the Land and Water Conservation Fund to help restore and protect areas in local communities. America the Beautiful, another project that's come online with the Biden administration. This is a locally led voluntary campaign, and I want to stress voluntary campaign to help protect and restore lands in the United States. There's this link of 30 to 30, which is restore 30% of our nation's lands and waters by 2030. Again, I want to stress, no government regulations, no government oversight, no heavy-handedness, all voluntary. And we're going to see funds available for solutions at the local level to help start to do this. Again, all voluntary. The North American Wetlands Conservation Act, a great tool that's utilized by our state partners, is also getting additional funding. Here in Wisconsin, we've been able to restore almost 200,000 acres throughout the state that protects wetlands and associated upland habitat for migratory birds, fish. And also one of the really neat things that happens with this funding source, it's not always just about waterfowl. When you go in and protect uplands, you're protecting grasslands. That's pollinator habitat. That's habitat for grassland birds. That's habitat for people to be able to go out and watch wildlife. Very important in our minds to help restore and protect property here in Wisconsin. One of the other really great tools that we have is what's known as the America the Beautiful. We're going to see an increase in our wildlife and sport fish restoration program, what we call WHISPER. This is a program where if you go and you buy a fishing lure, a fishing rod, if you buy gas at a marina, there's a small tax on that. The tax is collected by the Fish and Wildlife Service, and then we use a formula. We send that money back to Wisconsin DNR to do great things here in Wisconsin. Provide launch ramps, provide more fish from state fish hatcheries to be stocked, protect areas. But men and women who are fishing and hunting and boating are providing that tax revenue. And we provide a system that ensures as this tax money comes into the federal coffers, it goes back to the appropriate state for protection, enhancement, recreational opportunity enhancement in that particular state. And Wisconsin gets about $32 million a year to do this work. Interesting little side note is in a week or two, I'm going to be up at St. Croix Rods in Park Falls, Wisconsin, sitting down talking to the folks at St. Croix about why there's this tax. Sometimes the folks that manufacture fishing lures, rods, et cetera, don't quite understand the nexus back of this tax back to the communities that are important to them, fishermen, hunters, bird watchers, et cetera. So we're going to go over and just spend some time at St. Croix and explain this and make sure here in Wisconsin they understand this is going to a really good program run by Wisconsin DNR. Getting close to the end here, our Partners for Fish and Wildlife program is a great example of us working directly with private landowners. We're getting a bump up from the America the Beautiful Fund for our Partners program. We will go in to anybody who comes and requests from us and help restore wetlands on private property, no questions asked. No long-term contracts, no cost to the landowner. It's an extremely popular program that we have throughout the country, very popular here in Wisconsin. The other neat thing is that it provides jobs. We're not necessarily experts in backhoes and utilizing this kind of heavy equipment to make wetlands and restore wetlands. We send that money into local contractors. Everybody benefits. Jobs, wetlands restored on private property at the request of private landowners. We also work very closely with our great conservation partner, Ducks Unlimited, with this work. And Ducks Unlimited helps us design some of these projects. And they're a great partner for us, as well as Pheasants Forever and others here in Wisconsin as we restore some of these areas. All right, I'm going to end with just one last project, and that is just right here in Stevens Point. We're utilizing our authorities under the America the Beautiful program and our Partners project to help restore the Little Plover River. And we've been able to spend some money helping restore the Little Plover. It almost dried up in 2005, and it really became a poster child for central Wisconsin water management concerns. And we've worked with the Village of Plover to recreate about a 70-acre wetland and help restore a large prairie associated with the Little Plover. This helps recapture water, recharge groundwater in the Little Plover. It's a great opportunity for us to work with the Wisconsin Wetland Association, Portage County Land and Water Conservation District, and private landowners at their request. So the last program I'm going to talk about, is our National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Sustain Our Great Lakes program. This program is getting increased funding. There are a lot of small conservation groups, particularly in Southeast Wisconsin, that have benefited from this program. I have seen some of those projects, particularly in tributaries of the Milwaukee River, that have benefited from this. We're really proud of the local connection that we can go from working these huge projects with the Army Corps of Engineers to stop invasive carp, develop wetland protection along the Mississippi River, all the way down to a couple of local landowners who want to help restore wetland, remove a small barrier on their property. And our partnership with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Sustain Our Great Lakes program, allows us to do that. So I'm just super honored to be able to be here this morning to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past, where we're going to be in the future. But most importantly, this is an opportunity for me to thank private citizens for the work that you do. It's not lost on me that I'm talking to a group of folks who have a tremendous amount of passion and love for the waters and water resources of the United States, and particularly here in Wisconsin. I am impressed when people take their most valuable asset that they have, their time, their energy, their expertise, and put it into something like this. So it's on behalf of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, all the partners that I've mentioned here this morning, Wisconsin DNR in particular, thank you for everything that you do here in Wisconsin. Thank you for protecting the future, and thank you for protecting what we all love here, water. Thank you. Sure. Yes, very, very good question. We spent a lot of time focused on that, particularly in tributaries where if we open up a dam, we could have sea lamprey coming in. So it's a huge factor for us. We would never want to go in and open up a facility only to encourage an invasive species to get upriver. So our biologists work very closely through the permitting process with Wisconsin DNR. That's a huge issue for us. And we're not going to put pristine upper river waters in jeopardy by opening up a dam or a passageway for invasive species. Just not going to happen.
What are the chances of hackmatack expanding further into southeastern Wisconsin? Hackmatack? What are the chances of it expanding further?
Habitat?
Yeah, the region. Hackmatack National.
Oh yeah, got it.
What
okay.
are the
Very, very good. We're very proud of hackmatack, which is a Native American name for birch and larch, and it is a national wildlife refuge that's on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin and southeast Wisconsin. We will move forward where we have willing landowners who want to sell us land. We're never going to go in and condemn land. We're never going to go in and strong arm anybody. But we have a congressionally approved outline where we can go in and buy land, and we're going to continue to do that where we have people that want to voluntarily sell us land. And we can also use other authorities to help protect land in that area too. But it's a great project. Thank you for bringing it up.
Hello, I'm Pete Krager with the Pretty Lake Protection District. This past winter, we rescued a trumpeter swan off of our lake with the help of the local fire department and took it to a wildlife center. And it turned out that it was lead poisoned. It had a sinker in it that you could clearly see in an x-ray. And the wildlife center spent $2,500 operating on this beautiful bird. Unfortunately, there was another little piece of lead in there and the bird succumbed. Now I know there's about 6 states that ban lead fishing tackle. Is this something that the national or on a national level, I know lead, it's cheap, everybody uses it, but I think there needs to be steps to over time to ban lead. We had an event recently and we gave out tungsten sinkers and steel shot sinkers. Is this something on the radar of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? Thank you.
Yes, great question. Yes, it is. And 25 years ago, we led the charge as it relates to getting lead out of ammunition for waterfowl hunting. That was a huge lift, very controversial. We have areas now within our lands, the National Wildlife Refuge System, that we control, where we have some areas that are lead-free, other areas where we provide another source of ammunition for somebody that's going to go in there and deer hunt on a voluntary basis. We're doing everything we can to promote and develop a good scientific basis for continued looking at lead and providing a scientific basis for next steps. So yes, to answer your question, it's on our radar. We're very aware of it. And you just have to stay tuned and see what the next steps are going to be. Thank you.
One more question back here.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
Thanks for the great presentation, Mr. Wooley. You talked about a few different pieces of legislation, and I was wondering if you were following the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, and if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, a very, very good question. There is a potential for the states and tribes here in the United States to get a huge influx of additional dollars through what we call RAWA. It is legislation that's working its way through the House and Senate in Washington, D.C. right now. It would provide direct funding to states and tribes to continue to do environmental protection, assessment, provide more launch ramps, better launch ramps, hatchery fish, environmental protection, threatened and endangered species recovery work with state funds. It is right now got a lot of support in the House and the Senate. There's still some concerns about what is going to be the funding source. in Washington, D.C., known as is there going to be an offset? If there's going to be all this money headed out to for conservation, how are we going to pay for it? That still has not been worked out, but there is a lot of goodwill between Republicans and Democrats on this issue, and we'll see where it goes the next couple of months. But it would be a great tool if passed.
All right. And so you'd recommend too that people contact their lawmakers? Who would they reach out to if they want to advocate?
Well, I've got to be careful about lobbying, but anybody in the audience is free to contact whoever they want in Washington and express their support for these kind of activities. That's the beauty of being an American citizen versus where we started with my experiences back in 1975.
Let's thank Charlie once again for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're about ready to break for our next session, but I did have a couple of reminders coming up here. First, there are muffins and fruit on the back. Please grab a muffin before you leave the room. Everyone must grab a muffin. All right, we're waiting for some slides, I think. It's okay. So one thing I'll just say as we're waiting is reminder just to participate in the collaborative art project. So that was one of the reminders. As you go through the commons, grab a heart, write why you love your water and affix it to the collaborative art project. Another reminder is some of you have a printed program. On the back of that is a QR code about our evaluation for the convention. So we appreciate your input, your feedback. We look forward to reading your comments. So if you have a QR code on the back of your printed program, you can use that QR code. If you don't, we have the QR codes in the registration room if you use QR codes. Otherwise, you all will be getting an email after the convention with a link to our survey. So we invite you all to take that survey and provide us your feedback. Something else we want to invite you to think about is next year's convention already. We're starting to plan. And okay, so there's the survey QR code. If you can go, oh, I have the clicker. I can go one more. Oh, there we go. So next year's convention theme is building trust around water together. And so if you have an idea while you're here, if you hear something or learn about something or just are inspired and you think, I want to present about something that we're working on next year, we invite you to already fill out a proposal for next year's convention. Tell us what your idea is. And we'll then follow up with you to see how we can integrate you into next year's agenda. So see, it's already starting. Planning is starting for next year. And then the final reminder, I think it's, we go back. Yes, is our memory wall. So also we have in the commons by the posters is a place where we invite you to add a memory. Who inspired you for your love of water? Is there a special person who couldn't be here with us today that you want us to remember, that you want to remember, that you're thinking of? We want to have that memory wall there for you to put your special memories on so that we can all read them. So we invite you to participate in that as well. And finally, just one more reminder for lunch. We will all be coming back here for lunch. There will be a lot of people in here, and I know some folks might want to eat elsewhere. So just we invite you to take your lunch to a different room, to this bar area out here that's closed, that's not being used. You can sit out there if you'd like to. So we just want to give options for those who want to eat other places. You're welcome to do that, and then just leave your plate and your cup on a tray jack that's located around, or you can bring it back in here when you're done. But we wanted to give you those options in case you don't want to eat in a room with 300 plus people. So with that, it's time for our next session. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.